Hello everyone, Ruby Ravel here, clawing my way out of the blood-soaked trenches of this agonizing existence, but still with my eyes set on the furthest horizon, where I one day hope to climb up my own Mount Olympus and herald a new golden age of the gods. What are all these cryptic remarks about hellish experiences and heavenly ascension, you ask? Well, I'm here today to talk about the Sun's conjunction with Chiron and Jupiter in Aries, which is a very complex stellium indeed. Let's begin with the Sun's conjunction with Chiron. Now, the Sun is related to our personal identity, our sense of individuality, and our process of self-actualization and becoming as we ride that ecliptic highway through the skyway of life. Whereas Chiron is the wounded animal within us, the part of us that is aware of all the suffering and scarification of existence. In one of the Buddha's main teachings, there was the concept that suffering is one of the unavoidable facets of existence. We come into this world howling and screaming and largely propelled by the discomfort of being aware of the painful desires and survival needs that we have to get by, which always come with the clause that those needs could be denied or unmet and leave us in a position where we are starved and malnourished, that life will not always treat us kindly even if we feel it should be so. The Sun in Aries wants to feel unique, it wants to feel special, it wants to feel that it has lived and done something heroic that has separated it from the mundane oceanic morass of the collective existence, something that will make it stand apart, that will make it shine in a muscular manner that sets it apart as being, you know, this culture hero, this Promethean bringer of life in an otherwise grey world. But Chiron looks askance at Sun in Aries and says, it doesn't matter how special you are, you know, it doesn't matter if you are this radiant divine child, this innocent puer aeternus, who is convinced that through his raging fire and passion, he can transform and crusade to make the world a better place. In spite of all that, life will still hurt for you. Life will still be painful. There will still be wounds and agonizing experiences that will just hit you like the poison shaft of an arrow out of nowhere and seemingly with no purpose at all. And any heroism that you attempt to enact on the world stage will always have to align with a sense that no matter how greatly you are striving, no matter what you are achieving, no matter what triumphs, celebrations and victories come your way, there will always be that one part of you where there is that poisoned arrow that just cannot be healed. In a sadomasochistic way, Sun conjunct Chiron can almost make us feel that our specialness does come from our suffering. You know, if we were to look at an anatomical drawing of our mind, body and spirit and how they all intersect, it's almost like we could view that topography of the self, we could view that map of our personal experience, and we could draw pathways and interconnected dots between all our scars, between all the places where we fester and weep and hurt. And we can say, between all these scars, there is a larger pattern that has gone on to shape who I am. These pains can represent handicaps and points of personal limitation that prevent us from growing or fully fulfilling ourselves in one area simply because we lack the capacity, but they can also show where we have learned crucial lessons about the harshness of existence and the wisdom and personal insights that we have derived from having a very special and very individual and personal response to our own experience of a pain that everyone is potentially receptive to. I think the danger sometimes, though, with Sun Chiron is that we can identify so closely with all our suffering, with all our hardships, with all our pains and wounds and private agonies, that we can feel that they are the sum total of us. You know, I sometimes meet Sun Chiron people, and before you've hardly even opened your mouth to them to say hello, they've given you this long list of all the different mental and physical conditions that they have. And whilst these things can all be crucial parts of our experience and relationship with life, it's almost like that has become the frame with which they depict themselves. Their very notion of themselves is tied in with the archetype of the perennial sufferer, with the person who is the victim of life. And this can be very self-limiting in that their experience of themselves always seems to have to work around these conditions and be limited by them, rather than thinking, well, maybe I'm actually a bit more than this. Maybe these things don't have to define what I can do. Maybe I don't have to be doomed to suffer. Maybe I can still enjoy life and grow and flourish and prosper in spite of the long list of apparent handicaps that life has given me. And yet there is a kind of logic to approaching things this way, in that Sun-Chiron relationships can often bring us painfully close to what seems to be just the random, haphazard unfairness and inequality of existence. There is a legend that when Zeus is preparing someone's life, he has two jars, and into one he pours all their talents, all their positive and enjoyable qualities, and into the other he pours all of their tragedies, all of their woes, all of their Weltschmerz and unpleasant experiences. And it's almost like with Sun conjunct Chiron, we no longer see that jar of all the positive parts about us. We only see that horrible vessel into which the raw pain of how we experience ourselves has been poured like a horrible oil of devouring, all-consuming blackness. But I say unfair because sometimes our pains and our wounds and our personal difficulties can seem to set us apart and isolate us from the rest of humanity in very visible ways. You know, if someone is born blind, they are aware that they are living in a world where a huge majority of people are able to see. You know, someone like Beethoven, who is afflicted with early onset deafness, is now isolated from the rest of the world, in which most people can hear the music that he can create and which is denied him except as a private inner concerto. You know, I could look at myself and say the fact that I am having to undergo a hormonal treatment, and who knows, maybe even surgery down the line, just so that I can have the gender that I always feel I should have had, but which was denied me for some random reason, also sets me apart from the rest of the world in a way that is very visible. But hey, just like with this aspect, I also have Chiron conjunct Jupiter. And if I'm going to suffer, baby, I'm going to do it in a glamorous way. But the presence of Jupiter here modifies this conjunction between the Sun and Chiron very considerably. He gives it an element of spaciousness, meaning, and mythological gloss that it might otherwise lack. On our own, those chironic pains and wounds can feel so close that it's almost claustrophobic, like we have built a house for ourselves that is made out of nothing but the bricks and mortar of our own throbbing pain that just seems to be shining and radiating out of everything we see. It's inescapable. It's so close. There's a pulse, a pregnant pulse beating against our minds so that we are sick to death of it and can find the vicious infection staring back at us in everything that we say, experience, or do. Everything is just reminding us of those core sufferings that we experience. But Jupiter comes along like a benevolent uncle, like a priest with a grander vision, and he says, look, you may hurt, you may suffer, there may be a core innocence and specialness that you feel has been denied and compromised you in some way. You may feel that your individuality is circumscribed by the misfortunes that you've experienced. But I'm here to tell you that those things are not random, they are not chaotic, they are not nihilistic as you would like to think, Chiron. There is a meaning to them, there is a grander design, a grander pattern, there is a purpose, there is wisdom and insights to be derived from these things. Instead of keeping you shut off and closed from the world and making you feel like you are this exile in the larger community of humanity, I'm here to tell you that your pain can actually connect you with people. It can actually make you a teacher, a healer, a preacher, a prophet, this larger-than-life figure who is able to network and unite all the world together in this wonderful, joyous, messianic way. The fact is, all religions leave a lot of space for the nature of pain. You know, the very image of Christianity itself has a man being crucified on a cross. You know, we are aware that existence is painful. We even have myths in which the gods themselves are tortured and suffered. These are problems that we have engaged with since time immemorial. Far from pain being this thing that nails you to the horrible cross of the moment, it's actually nailing you to the cross of incarnation, to eternity. It's connecting you to the whole long ancestry of everyone who suffered and has dealt with those shamanic wounds that first begin as a dismemberment but which later turn into prophetic ability and a healing power that gives us a special place within the community. The fact is, Jupiter is always looking to find those underlying dots, those grand designs that link us with more of the world so we can incorporate more of the world within ourselves, so that more freedom and options are available to us instead of our pain shutting us down. So Jupiter conjunct Chiron says, yes, everybody hurts, but that means that hurt can be the linchpin, the vital glue that makes it easier for me to come together with the rest of humanity, to come together in a community of lamentations and suffering and say, yes, we are all wounded, we are all struggling, and yet we still carry on together as a people, as a group, as a faith, all in the hopes that through working on this pain together, we can hope to heal and cleanse more of the world. So Jupiter wants us to feel hopeful, not woebegone and self-pitied about these things. He's saying these wounds are an opportunity. You know, this pain is a vehicle, an opening, a doorway, a passport to a deeper interfusion with the rest of the cosmos. These are invitations to grow, not things that have to keep us small. The healing journey can be an adventure. It can be something that can bring wonderful people and teachers and healers and figures of compassion into our life. You don't have to lock your way and just nurse your wounds. This can be your very meaning for being, you know. I keep talking about Parsifal lately, but it wasn't until Parsifal became aware of his own wounds and the wounds he'd inflicted on others that his quest to become a knight actually took on a greater stature of what it meant. He could embrace the process of becoming a hero as being something that was not just about his own glorification, but which was a quest to try and heal the world as a whole. But as a united front, this stellium in Aries, Chiron in general and the aspects he makes to other planets and the signs and houses he's located in can give us an idea of how we respond to pain and suffering on a multitude of different levels. So I think the first raw experience and response to pain that Chiron in Aries might have is that it will respond to feeling wounded by getting angry, by getting aggressive, by looking for someone to fight, by looking for someone else to blame for the suffering that it is feeling. And it may be no one else's fault. It may be just one of those things that does just happen haphazardly in the world, as is so often the case with Chiron. But Aries still feels that no, in order to take charge of this pain, in order to do something about it, I need to find the mother effer who caused this to begin with, you know? It's much easier if we have a scapegoat, if we have someone who we can pin the guilt on for our suffering, because then by causing suffering to that scapegoat, we will feel that we have passed on the buck, that we will have transferred and exercised our own pain by making someone else be the recipient of it. But that's the lowest response of Chiron in Aries. You know, we're already seeing that in terms of a lot of the wounded masculinity that is expressing itself through figures like Jordan Peterson and Andrew Tate and people in the incel movement. But there is a more positive way that Chiron in Aries can express itself. It can say, in tandem with that Jupiter and that general Aryan vibe, that yes, I may suffer, but I'm still going to try and do great things. I'm still going to work against those personal limitations, and I'm going to find a way that they can make it heroic. Sure, you know, it's amazing if a knight goes out and achieves great things, but if that knight is hurting inside and still goes on to achieve those great things, doesn't that in some way make him more heroic? Doesn't that in some way make him more special? So Aries will always try and respond to the problem of pain with action, with a crusade, with a cause, with a feeling that it has to be a champion for something, rather than sitting down and contemplating its pain as Chiron in another sign might. It says, no, I will turn this pain into the grand drama and the grand story of my life. It will be so heroic, people will just have to make movies about it, you know? I would also say that humor as a coping mechanism is also a big factor of Chiron Jupiter aspects, because humor is often this way of taking the tragedies, the absurdities, the crises and the agonies of life and saying, this is ridiculous, this is actually really funny. And if you can take that pain and turn it into something hilarious, then you have engaged with this kind of medicinal transfiguration, this metempsychosis, where a wounded thing has been turned into a clown instead. And I think we often see this in that there are many comedians like Spike Milligan, for instance, who was a manic depressive, who do have this raw suffering eating at them, and yet turn it into this spirit of generosity that says, yes, I feel hurt, but I also know everyone else is hurt too. So instead of weeping and wallowing, why don't I make everyone laugh? Why don't I, with the huge generosity of my spirit, go out there and entertain people, put on a show, put on a spectacle, so that through all of the difficulties and hardships that they are going on in life, I know that I have been a source of brightness, that I have temporarily distracted them from those incurable wounds by making them laugh, by making them see the funny side of an otherwise painful and hellish existence. And that can translate into the desire to want to be any kind of entertainer. I think someone with a Chiron Jupiter aspect might also want to become an actor, and I have done acting in my past, I will admit, and I hope to do more in the future, because there is something tremendously healing about going on stage or going behind a camera and playing a character who has to undergo some kind of tragedy or loss. And through reliving your own tragedies and losses through a character that you have a deep involvement with, but also a mythical detachment from at the same time, it's almost like you, through that role-playing, you are taking control back of your life again. You get to be both the person experiencing it and also the god on the outside of the experience who can see the grander narrative that pain is incurring in. You know, when we are just in the raw moment of pain, that's all we can see. But once we pull back the lens and we turn that pain into a punctuation mark in a mythic story, then we can say, ah yes, if he hadn't been hurt here, the hero wouldn't have gotten there. It was the making of the hero, not the destruction of him. This can obviously not always be manifest in the best possible ways. Sometimes with Chiron, Jupiter, using all of the dramas and exalted highs of life can be a way of trying to escape from one's pain, a way of distracting from it. If we're always making jokes, if we're always laughing, if we're always exaggerating things and just going from one party and festival to the other and traveling from one continent to the other, so long as we keep moving, maybe we can escape Chiron, maybe we can run away from him. You know, if we just commit to always keeping things on that larger echelon, then Chiron, that wounded centaur limping along behind us, he won't catch us because we won't stop long enough for him to catch up with us. And I have definitely seen some people who've lived their whole lives like that, and eventually fate intervenes and has to stop them long enough to say, no, you need to sit with this. You need to stop running away. You need to stop having adventures and thinking that you're going to find the Holy Grail and make everything better. Sometimes you just need to sit with it and be honest with yourself instead of always putting on the dress of a god and hoping that through your own magnified divinity you will somehow transcend the pain of being human. You have to be both. You have to be both the amazing divinity and the raw suffering human at the same time. And if you try and split them apart, then it's like a centaur who's been chopped down the middle. It's not going to do anyone much good and it looks ridiculous. But ultimately what Chiron conjunct Jupiter needs is to have a philosophical framework in which pain can make sense. To have this larger cosmological outlook on the world in which pain, rather than just being this random thing that happens to otherwise good people as well as the bad, this indifferent rain of nails that falls upon us all, he can say, no, actually pain is one of the meanings of existence. It is one of the things that gives it a certain piquancy, a certain sharpness that can actually make us relate more intimately and intensively with it. It is something that is encoded within the blueprint of reality, or at least as we experience it as mortal, perishable beings. Therefore, if it's an essential part of existence, we need to understand it. We need to realize that this is important, that if whoever made this strange matrix in which we all lived encoded this in, we have to ask why. There must be a reason, there must be a purpose. It's too big a thing, it's too all-encompassing, it's too globally found in everyone just to be a random bug or virus that has crawled in to the interface of life. Let's look at this more deeply and see what the purpose of pain really is. Anyway, who knows what the purpose of pain really is? I have my own suspicions. With my own Chiron conjunct Jupiter in Cancer in the 6th house, opposite Saturn. Oh my gosh. How does she do it, people? How does she do it? Let's give her a round of applause just for making it through this video. What a godsend. Anyway, please talk to me about your own Chiron placements, your own experience of this transit. If you have any deep Chironian wounds that you feel you need some kind of astrological advice or counsel over, you know where my email is. It's below. Don't be afraid to send me a message. I'm very nice. You can support me on Patreon to help me pay for the healing of my own Chironian wounds. Please. Yeah, who knows? Maybe I'll do a more cheerful video next time. But right now, I just needed to find that hot tub of pain and just sink right into those bubbles of agony and sniff the napalm. Anyway, lots of love. Speak to you soon.